to direct his own steps. Even in Proverbs chapter 16 and verse number 25, the wise man Solomon said, there is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. So what way does a young man go when he doesn't know which way to go? Which way does he turn when he doesn't know which way to turn? Jesus said that we ought to enter in at the straight gate, because wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many shall go in therein. That's the way that the young man goes. When he doesn't know which way to go, he'll travel the broad way. That broad way is a popular way. That broad way shows them the glitz and the glamour of the world. That broad way is a sensational way. That broad way is an attractive way. And that's the reason why, if he don't have some kind of direction, he'll travel the broad way. But the Bible says that there are those who travel that way. They're going to meet the end of death, which is the reason why we've got to reach them while we can. If we leave it up to them to travel their own way, they will get to the point where they will think that what's abominable is acceptable. They will get to the point where they'll start thinking that being bad is a benefit. They'll get to the point where they'll think that crime is comfortable and what's detestable is delightful. They will get to a point where they'll think that evil is enjoyable. They'll get to the point where they think that what's false is fantastic. They'll think that what's gross is great, and hideousness will make them happy. When they are allowed to travel the broad way, they'll become indifferent toward iniquity. They'll seek to justify junk, and they'll think it's keen to kill and lofty to be lascivious. They'll think that misery is meaningful and that naughtiness is needful. They will become open with their oppression and think that pain is peaceful. They'll make ruckus a reality, and they'll think that sin is sensational. They'll trade turmoil for tranquility, and they'll make an effort to understand ugliness. The young man needs to know tonight that there is no salvation in the broad way. He needs to know that regardless of how good it looks, there's nothing but death and destruction following that broad way. When you follow the crowd, you go end up where the crowd is going to end up. That's the reason why Jesus said, enter ye in at the straight gate. What's the business of that straight gate? Jesus said, because straight is that gate, and narrow is that way that leadeth unto life. If he's going to have real life, if he's going to learn how to live in this old wicked world, he's got to put himself on the narrow way. That's another way of saying I can't conform to this world, but I got to be transformed by the renewing of my mind. I can't allow the world to dictate how I ought to think, how I ought to dress, or how I act. I've got to put my hand in God's hand and be like the blessed man in Psalms 1 who did not walk in the counsel of the ungodly, who did not stand in the way of sinners, who did not sit in the seat of the scornful. But I've got to get him to the point where his delight is in the law of God, and it's in God's law that he meditates day and night. And when I can get him to that point, I can lease him over into God's care, because when he got that far down, then God's got him in safekeeping. And he says, he shall be like a tree that's planted by going to bring forth fruit in its season. Its leaves are never going to wither. And whatsoever he does is going to prosper. And so when I get him to that point, when the world tells him that it's not possible, he'll turn around and says, oh yes, Luke 18:27 says that all things are possible to them that believe. When the world tells him that he's just too tired and that he don't need to go another further, he can say, but Jesus said in Matthew chapter 11 and verse number 28, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. When the world tells him that he can't make it, he can turn around and say, but wait a minute, the Bible says in Philippians chapter 4 and verse number 13, I can do all things through Christ who will give me the strength. When the world tells him that he's all by himself and that if he don't run with them, then he's going to be an outcast to society, he can reach back and say, but wait a minute, Jesus said, I'll never leave thee, nor will I forsake thee, so that you may boldly say that the Lord is my helper, and I will not fear what man shall do unto me. He'll get to the point where he can look trouble in the eye and say, the Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. He'll get to the point where he can look tribulation straight in his mouth and tell him that he gonna make it because God is able to help him through. He says, if God is for me, then he's more than the world against me. He'll be able to say, even though weeping may endure for a night, I can get up the next morning because joy will come over in the morning. If you take him on the straight way, he'll make you through trials and tribulations. He'll stand while everybody else is bowing. He'll stand up for God when everybody else is running with the devil. And so is the young man safe? No ma'am and no sir, because he don't know God, because he don't know good, and he don't know which way to go. Therefore it's up to each and every one of us to grab some young person by the hand and tell them you ain't got to live like this. You're living beneath your privileges. You need to come and go with me so I can show you what real living is. Jesus said that the thief is coming to steal, kill, and to destroy. But he said, I have come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. Take them into your bosom and show them what the abundant life is. It ain't about having a fancy car. It ain't about wearing some name across your britches. It ain't about where you stay. It's not about who you know, but it's about having my relationship right with God, so that when it's his time to call and mine to answer, I can answer saying, yes Lord, here I am. I'm ready to go back home with you. And then and only then will the young man be saved. Right now. We got to go get it. We got to show him the straight way and the narrow way. Show him the examples of Joseph. Show him the examples of Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. We know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. See, that's what that Babylonian name. Mama didn't name him no Shadrach. Mama didn't name him no Meshach. Mama didn't name him no Abednego. Mama named him Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Their names were changed when they went into Babylonian captivity and served among the king's courts. A change in name indicates a change in status, even though their names were changed. Their religion didn't change. When it was time to bow down to Nebuchadnezzar's statue, they didn't stand up as Shadrach,
no sir,
Meshach as Abednego.
Sir.
They stood up as Hananiah,